Alrighty, so you thought I wasn't gonna do the preview for this upcoming match week, didn't you? And I know it is a little bit late, and I apologize for that. I should have done this yesterday, but I had a lot of things to do yesterday that I wasn't able to do the preview for this weekend's match week. But as the old saying goes, better late than never in terms of doing a preview. And by the time I upload this preview, it'll be probably about an hour before the first couple of games of this busy Saturday night action of match week. I believe now number 25. We're getting very close in terms of the Leagues Cup break, and I really don't like the fact that when the league decided to do this, where all 14 games is between the busy window between 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, all the way up to midnight 30 p.m. Eastern, 9:30 p.m. Pacific, because there's just way too many games that is on at the same time, and usually when that happens, it's good helping time. So let us actually begin by talking about the first game. And yes, this is a Vancouver Whitecaps 50th anniversary jersey that I'm wearing. For those that is wondering, I always like to decided to wear a new jersey that I actually just got this a couple of days ago in a preview, and I won't be surprised I'll be wearing some more new jerseys that I'm going to do throughout the Leagues Cup, because I know in a couple of weeks MLS is going to be doing their throwback third kit that they're going to announce, and there's already a couple of leagues, and I'll tell you what, some of them are very good. But let us actually begin the first of what would be 5 games that start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, and judging there will also have 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific games. I think we're gonna have 1 out of 8 games that's gonna be happening at one time, and there's gonna be even times where there's gonna be 6 games. It's gonna overlap again. Just don't like when all these games are bunched up around this around the busy time of the Saturday night action. But we start off with Cincinnati versus Charlotte FC. So Cincinnati 15-3-4. They are the new leader in terms of the Supporters Shield standing, coming off that big Supporters Shield battle between them and Inter Miami. And they're facing against a Charlotte team that has a 9-5-8 record and are still kind of flying under the radar. Like, I mean, people realize that Charlotte is actually in the playoffs and are doing very good this season, and I'm pretty sure Shark fans wouldn't mind. They would love to be keeping under the radar and be kind of that dark horse team. And also, by the way, for this video, if I'm doing this, I'm suffering a bit of an allergy right now, so I apologize if I have to constantly do this every single time because my nose is being a little bit stiff. But in terms of all-time meeting, 2-2-1 in favor of Cincinnati. Last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams before Cincinnati win 3-0 against Charlotte. Then it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams, and then Cincinnati won 2-0 against Charlotte before Charlotte went 2-0 against Cincinnati, and that was the only time that Charlotte was able to beat Cincinnati. So yeah, it should be a very interesting matchup. There's a lot of very interesting matchup this week, and obviously we know that we also have the rematch of MLS Cup from last year, but yeah, this is definitely an interesting one between two really good teams. I would say Cincinnati is the favorite because again, they worked so hard to get the supporter shield lead. I'm pretty sure they definitely doesn't want to relinquish that lead, especially I think Inter Miami is off this week because I don't see them on this board or on the other board, so they have a chance to extend that lead in terms of the supporter shield standing, and that the good news for them is that if they don't, they'll still have a 1 point lead, but ideally they want to extend that lead over Inter Miami. But moving on, we got DC United versus Nashville SC. So DC had just completely fallen the map in the past couple of months. I mean, I actually look back and they're actually now on an 11-game winless run. They have not won a single game ever since they beat Atlanta back in May, and they're facing against a Nashville side that I don't know if this is the first game in charge for BJ Callahan. Obviously, he is making his way with Nashville after it was announced a couple of weeks ago, and that yeah, we'll see whether if this is indeed his maiden voyage as the head coach of Nashville SC, and if that is the case, congratulations Nashville, you just got a win in this game because you get the new head coach boost that we usually talk about, and I will say that in this game. There's a good chance that they can win against a DC team that, like I said, they have just completely fallen apart in these last 2 months, almost at the same rate as what we see with Toronto and Minnesota right now. Just all 3 of those teams just completely fall off the cliff in these last couple of games. 4-8-11 is the record. How bad has DC fallen apart? Well, they're now dead last in the league. That's how bad things have gone for this team. All time meeting, heavily favorite Nashville. In fact, DC have never beat Nashville in the 6 meetings that both of these teams meet. Nashville winning 4 out of those 6 meetings, and the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was a 2-0 win that Nashville had against DC. Before the 1-1 draw between both of these teams, and then a 3-1 road win against DC. Then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams, and then Nashville winning 5-2 against DC United. So judging by the recent history and judging by the fact that DC has not won a game in 11 games, and Nashville is kind of having a bit of a renaissance. They're definitely doing much better recently, and not to mention if they are going to have VJ Callahan, and this is his first game in charge at helm. Yeah, something tells me that Nashville will be heavily favorites in this game. Although I won't say those words, as I said, well, before many times in preview, that I don't want to congratulate a team of getting an automatic 3 points, because every time when I say that, if you believe in curses and reverse jinx, there you go. But anyway, moving on, we got Montreal versus Atlanta United. So this is definitely a desperation derby. Both of these teams are sitting just outside the playoff picture, with Montreal being 11 and Atlanta the first team out if the playoffs started today. Montreal 5-8-9, whereas Atlanta is 6-6-10. All-time meeting 7-3-3 in favor of Atlanta. And the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was Atlanta winning 4-1 against Montreal. Then it was a 1-0 road win that Atlanta had against Montreal. Then Montreal had a 2-1 win against Atlanta United before it was a 3-3 draw between both of these teams, and then Montreal winning 2-1 against Atlanta United. So safe to say that, Atlanta has had the better all over Montreal, though at least in the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it has evened out a little bit. It used to be Atlanta just always loved to play against Montreal because they always get a win against them, and we'll see whether or not if they can do so in this matchup, especially with the way that, it feels like that new interim head coach moves in the way of Rob Valentino in charge of this team. It's started to rub off a little bit for this team, and they're starting to look like the team under Gonzalo Pineda, a team that clearly lacks that talent. But obviously, we know that this summer this team is going to go through a big transformation, because again they're definitely doing what you usually see Atlanta United does, which is eventually sell their player off of profit. I mean, they're going to get $50 million off of that profit, so there's no doubt that they're gonna reinvest, as we have seen before, and this could be a complete different Atlanta United team after the transfer window over, on when they do make these signings, and hope that it will be enough for them to get into the playoffs. Now, moving on, we got New England versus Orlando City. So two teams that you could kind of say that has had a bad season lately, but recently they have done a little better. Although for New England, after that incredible 4-game winning streak that they had, they're starting to slow down a little bit. They have only won 1 out of their last 4 games, but their record is 7-1-12, whereas Orlando's 7-6-9. New England has the all-time advantage with an 8-7-5 overall record, and the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it was a 3-2 home win that Orlando had against New England, before New England winning 3-1 against Orlando City. Then New England won 3-0 on the road against Orlando, before it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams, and then it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams as well. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. Consider, Orlando, as I said before, throughout the season, the only reason why they're in playoff contention, in fact, I think they're now above the playoff line right now, is because they're winning these road games. Though I will say that they have definitely started to do much better at home, which that is good news if you're an Orlando City fan, because again, the problem for them this season, well, there's a lot of problems. The main problem obviously is that they can't score goals. Well, that is if they're not playing on the road. On the road, for whatever reason, they can score goals, and at home they just can't do so. And you wonder, is it maybe because of the style that Oscar Pereira can kind of use, and that they're kind of becoming like Minnesota United from a couple of years ago, where that was the problem for Minnesota a couple of years ago. In fact, actually, that wasn't just a couple of years ago. That was literally last season, as the big issue for the Loons, of able to win road games, but for whatever reason they can't win at Allianz Field. Whereas for New England, again, they've been definitely winning their fair share of home and road game as well. Lately they have definitely been much better at home. In fact, I think well, actually they did lose to Columbus at home, but let's be honest, that was Columbus, and Columbus is just red hot right now in the league. But besides that, they actually been pretty good this season at home. So this should be an interesting matchup between one team that is pretty good, at least recently at home, against a team that seems like they're really rely on that role form as a way to hope to get themselves into the playoffs this season. Now, moving on, we got Toronto versus the Philadelphia Union. So I mentioned this as a desperation derby. I think this is truly the real desperation derby because it is pretty much said that both of these teams need a win and need a win badly because both of these teams are just going the wrong direction. TFC, after all the good start that they have and all the goodwill that they built in the beginning of the season, they have completely fallen apart lately and started to look like the team from last season. And started to also look like the team what we thought that they would be, which is contending for the wooden spoon. Whereas for the Union, again, I think it is clear to say that the decision shouldn't that they have to make this offseason is that it's time to get rid of this core. It's time to start a rebuild. It is pretty clear is that this core that they have it is completely falling apart. And these last couple of performances kind of prove it. So including their last game, which I mean, if that was not a big call of them just really tear things down of them how they just completely fall apart against Chicago. I don't know what is. I mean, they have a 4-9-9 record while TFC have a 7-3-13 record. All-time meeting 14-8-11 in favor of Toronto, and the last five head-to-head matchup it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams, and a 3-1 Toronto win against Philly. Then it was a 4-2 win at home against Toronto. Then the Union did win 4-0 against Toronto, and then Toronto won 2-1 against the Philadelphia Union. But like I said, both of these teams desperately need wins. Like both of these teams, it's been a long winless run, and something tells me it could come to an end if one of these teams can win. Although again, if it ends in a draw, I'm pretty sure that's not going to satisfy anybody, as is usually the case for the desperation derby. So yeah, again, I think this is the true meaning of a desperation derby, and I would say out of all the desperation derby I mentioned from this season, this is probably the most intense one because this is actually between two teams that are just completely fall apart that desperately need a win and are in the midst of a long winless run, and we'll see which team, of course, is able to do so. I still need to eventually do a video about the Union and how it has just completely fallen apart for them this season. Now, moving on, and now talking about some Western Conference game as we're getting to the 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific start. Obviously, usually when the game starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, it's usually an Eastern Conference game. Though we have seen some rare games that starts around that time, that starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, that are Western Conference game. So now we're getting to some of the Western Conference game, and we start off with Austin taking on the Seattle Sounders. This is the first of I think 5 games that's going to be starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Austin with an 8-6-8 record. They've been a little bit inconsistent lately. There's been times where they have shown that they look like the worst team in the league, and then there's times where Austin do their usual Austin kind of thing or their usual Los Verdes kind of thing, which is somehow in some way let's ignore all the XG and all the expectancy percentage rate and somehow just use devil magic to win a game that they have no business in terms of winning. Well, they're gonna have to try to do so again against the Sounders. That again, the Sounders has definitely rejuvenized. This looks like almost like a flashback of a couple of years ago, where the Sounders are always a team that likes to punt the first part of the season, and then they go for a crazy second half resurgence to somehow made it to MLS Cup. And I don't know if that's gonna be the case again this season, but man, they're definitely on track of it with them playing much better lately with an 8-7-7 record. All-time meeting 3-3-1 in favor of the Sounders. The last 5 head-to-head matchup was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams before Seattle winning 2-1 against Austin. Then Austin did win 2-1 on the road against Seattle, and that's the only time that Los Verdes is able to get a win against the Sounders. Before the Sounders winning 3-0 against Austin, then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. So yeah, should be very interesting matchup between both of these teams. If Seattle wins, that means it's just a continuation of this crazy resurgence that they have. But if Austin win, they'll probably win it in some of the craziest fashion, which is not having a lot of shots and probably somehow getting outplayed in the game against the Sounders. But again, that's just how Austin operate. Like so far, the wins that they have this season and some of the result that they've been able to get especially on the road, mirror what we saw in the 2022 season, where just throw away all the XGs and throw away all the expectancy stats. Austin doesn't operate on that. They don't care. They'll somehow BS their way to a win, and I don't know if that's obviously a good thing for Austin fans to have. Consider, is it a good thing that they at times play over their heads and get wins, even though they have no business to do so, because again, once they do get into the playoffs and they can't rely on that. So yeah, you better believe Austin turned into to one of the worst team and one of the most frustrating team to watch in the league. Now, moving on, speaking of a frustrating team to watch, that's the Chicago Fire this season and really for the past decade in a nutshell. Like these last two games for the Chicago Fire pretty much is a quick summary of the pain and suffering that they have had throughout the decade. I mean, just fresh off of a 4-3 win that they had against the Philadelphia Union, an incredible comeback. And then what they do in the next game, they completely lay an egg against the worst team in the league and literally decided to give a clean sheet to a team that have given up 50 plus goals and have not won a game since May. Now they do have a way chance to amend that, though if they have to do so, they're going to be playing against an NYCFC side that while they have definitely done well this season and they have definitely started to look much better, part of that is because they're playing at home. And I think it is really clear that NYCFC is starting to become a team that, when they're playing at home, they're very strong and they can win games. And that's not surprised because home field advantage for NYCFC is just so big and so unfair because of them playing at a baseball stadium. But the road form has been a problem this season for NYCFC. And they'll have a chance to correct that when they face against a Fire team. NYCFC 11-2-9, while Chicago 5-6-11. Uh, All-time meeting 11-6-3 in favor of NYCFC. And the last five head-to-head matchup, it was a 1-0 win that NYCFC had against Chicago before it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. Then NYCFC won 2-0 against Chicago before NYCFC winning 1-0 against the Fire. And then NYCFC also winning 1-0 against the Chicago Fire. So NYCFC had Chicago's number at least in the all-time meeting and even in the last five head-to-head matchup. And don't be surprised if that is the case again. Though again, this is just Chicago Fire. They're a team known for being inconsistent, being very frustrating to watch. So do not be surprised that somehow in some way they just came off of probably the worst loss they have suffered this season against the team that is literally the worst team in the league and getting shut out, and somehow they're able to get a win against NYCFC because again, for whatever reason, NYCFC this season they haven't been a good road team whatsoever. Now, moving on, we got Dallas taking on the Galaxy. So Dallas has been a little bit inconsistent lately, but at least in terms of their home form, it's still pretty good. 6-5-11 is the record, whereas the Galaxy 12-7-4. I wonder the home form is really good is mainly because of the heat in Texas. Again, it's we see some teams have good home field advantage because they rely heavily on the weather. Dallas is definitely one of those places to do so because you better believe it is very hard to play in the hot Texas sun. We even see it with Houston as well. Houston has always have a good home advantage because of the heat and humidity, and you can say the same about Austin as well because they the opponent they just do not want to play in the hot Texas sun, and the Galaxy will have to do so in this one. And in some way, that might give an advantage to Dallas too, because the Galaxy is always a team that likes to be very direct, and it's hard to do so when you're trying to be direct and trying to go quickly in that hot, humid weather as we're expected in this game that Dallas is going to be playing against the Galaxy. So in terms of all-time meeting, 40, 13, and 38 in favor of the Galaxy. Of course, these two teams are the original 10 teams that came into the league in 96 as part of the inaugural season. But the last five head-to-head matchup, it was a 3-1 win that the Galaxy had against Dallas before Dallas did win 4-1 on the road against the Galaxy. Then Dallas win 3-1 against the Galaxy, and it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams, and then Dallas winning 3-1 against the Galaxy. So Dallas has had some good ownage, at least in the last five head-to-head matchup. I mean, just don't look at the last game when the Galaxy did beat Dallas. But again, should be very interesting. And again, I just wonder if you're the Galaxy, yes, they have been very good this season, and a part of that is because they're probably the most direct team this season on the attack. When they are get the ball and they're running the other way, yeah, you better get out of the way because they're gonna probably put the ball into the back and then. But that kind of style doesn't really quite work when you're playing in a hot Texas sun like what we see it. I know it won't be in the hot Texas sun because it's a night game, but still, as you go into the evening, it is still very hot, and you wonder is that style going to work against the Dallas team that again they have shown that they have used that as a home field advantage and been winning these games even against some really good team right now in the Western Conference. But that being said, I am now going to switch board and look at the last games to finish up this preview of match week, I believe number 25. So speaking of the hot Texas weathers, unfortunately for Minnesota, they're gonna have to deal with it as well. They're playing against Houston, and yeah, it's safe to say that I don't have a lot of confidence coming into this game, and this has been the case for the past month or so, where this team, ever since they've gone on this losing run because of it being very short-handed and them not having a lot of depth. Yeah, I don't have a lot of confidence when they face against a Dynamo team that have been very good this season. Though I will say this: last time Minnesota did play against Houston, and it was in the middle of the summer, they were able to get a win in that game. So something tells me maybe this could be a little different. And at least recently, Minnesota, their luck when it comes to playing at well, it used to be called BVB8 the stadium. Now it's called Shell Energy Stadium. Their recent form in Houston actually has been pretty good. And this used to be a place that Minnesota just cannot win against the Dynamo. Now, in terms of so the record 8-6-7, whereas Minnesota is 8-5-9. All-time meetings still in favor of Minnesota with a 10-4-7 record. Well, last time both of these teams met each other, it was in the beginning of the season. Minnesota lost that 1-2-1 against the Dynamo before Minnesota did win 3-0 against Houston, before Minnesota winning 1-0 against the Dynamo, and then winning 2-1 against the Dynamo at home, and then also winning on the road 2-1 against the Houston Dynamo. But something tells me that record probably is not going to tell this story. Again, the Dynamo should be heavy favorites in this one. They've been playing pretty good lately. Even when they're dropping points and losing games, they still look like a competitive team. And against a Minnesota side that, again, it's pretty clear that, as I've said many times throughout the review, they need reinforcement badly. I mean, as soon as the transfer window open, I hope that eventually there's going to be some reinforcement, because as what I envision came to reality. This team, as soon as they had this stretch where they completely fall apart and have lost 6 in a row, they're now outside the playoff picture. They're not going to get themselves back into the playoff picture if they don't have some reinforcement. And if you ask me what kind of reinforcement they need, everything. I mean, right now, during this 6 game losing streak, everything has gone wrong with this team. Their defense has been bad. Their midfield has been even worse, and then the attack has been inconsistent as well. There's games where they look good, and then there's games there where they just look like the old Loons team that I've seen, where no matter how many chances you create, they can't finish. Uh, uh, Even if their life depends on. Now, moving on, we got St. Louis versus the Vancouver Whitecaps. So St. Louis 4-10-8 record. They're kind of still in the beginning stage of tasting that new interim head coach boost. Though in the last game, it was kind of a harsh reality that, yeah, you can't play against San Jose every single week. They play against the Whitecaps at home this time with a 9-5-7 record. All-time meeting 2-0-1 in favor of Vancouver, and that include that crazy 7-goal game that they played just a couple of weeks ago, where Vancouver was able to come from behind and win 4-3, despite the fact that at one point they were down 2-0 in the game against St. Louis. Then they win 3-0 at home against St. Louis, before St. Louis did win 3-1 against Vancouver in the first ever meeting between both of these teams at City Park. So we'll see how this game, of course, will turn out. We'll see. Maybe the Whitecaps could get their second win against St. Louis, because again, St. Louis, as much as they are really hoping they will get more of that new interim head coach boost, at the end of the day, this is still a bad team, and that again, you can't play against the Quakes every single week and play against the worst team every single week, and we'll see whether or not if they can shake that label and maybe get a win or even a draw too. Even though I know St. Louis fans don't want to see a draw because they've drawn way too many time this season, but I'm pretty sure if you ask any St. Louis fan, they'll be dying to say that I want to see a draw or maybe even a win rather than just going in an incredible horrendous run. And again, part of the horrendous run is not just the fact that they're suffering from a second season syndrome, but injuries have hit this team so hard to a point where they're probably the most injury riddled team right now within the league. Now, moving on, we got the Colorado Rapids versus the New York Red Bulls. So this is a very underrated matchup. In fact, if you want to talk about what is a matchup that is very under the radar and a matchup that doesn't get talked a lot of, it's this one because you wouldn't think that a Colorado game would be a fun game, but the Rapids have been very good this season. 11-4-8 is the record, especially at home too. They've been very good this season at home. Whereas they face against a Red Bull side that also has been pretty good this season. The problem with the Red Bulls this season is you can see the draw number. It started it's kind of creeped up on them a little bit. They started drawing way too many games. Their big issue this season is obviously finishing. I mean, finishing has been a huge problem for this Red Bulls team, at least in the last couple of games, where simply if they were just a little bit more clinical in terms of finishing, those draws that they had and those draw points could have easily been wins. But this is the only game that started at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. All-time meeting, 27-17 record in favor of the Rapids. Last five head-to-head matchup. This is the first meeting since 2022, and the last time both of these teams play against each other, man, it was a crazy game. The Rapids won 5-4 in that game. I still remember that 9-goal thriller of just so back and forth and so much. And something tells me it could be the case again because these teams are not shy in terms of the goals scoring. But before that, the Rapids did win 2-0 against the Red Bulls before the Red Bulls winning 2-1 on the road against Colorado. So at least in terms of the last couple of head-to-head meetings, the road team has been the better side. And then the Red Bulls won 1-0 against the Rapids before the Rapids winning 2-1 against the New York Red Bulls. So like I said, it's a very underrated matchup. I would expect there could be some goal and there should be some talent that is being on hand. One thing I want to also mention for the Red Bulls is the fact that Emil Frostberg he's going to be out for a couple of weeks, and obviously that's a bit of a blow because he's been the catalyst in terms of that attack. But even then, I do think that as much as I say that they're not really missing that much quality. They're still pretty good on the attacking end, but as I said before, the finishing has to be better for this team. The finishing has just not been good enough for this team. There's just so many games that they've drawn points because of bad finishing, and they're gonna have to do so against a Rapids team that even though they're not gonna have Georgi Mihailovic in this one, it doesn't seem like that they miss a beat. They're still creating a lot of chances and still being a very fun team to watch. And how much time do I say that a Colorado Rapids team is a fun team to watch? I mean, a couple of years ago they did finish first and they were a fun team to watch, but consider how heading into this season after a disastrous last year it was, and it looked like a doom and gloom season, especially after they decided to hire Chris Armas as their new head coach, very unpopular hire. It feels like the Colorado Rapids are getting something that we saw the Houston Dynamo got last season, where the Dynamo hired a guy that was very unpopular, and he only turned them into a juggernaut. Now, I'm not saying the Colorado Rapids is going to win U.S. Open Cup like Houston did with Ben Olsen. Obviously, Colorado won't win U.S. Open Cup because of that competition to begin with. But they're definitely a team that could be very fun to watch and could be a sleeper team to pick when the playoffs does begin. Now, moving on. Now we get to the West Coast game and the late night games, and we start off with the Portland Timbers versus RSL. For whatever reason, on the website, this game labeled 10:25 p.m. Eastern, 7:25 p.m. Pacific. It starts 5 minutes earlier than these two other West Coast game. I don't know why that is the case, but nevertheless, the Timbers have a 9-6-8 record, well, whereas RSL by far the best team this season on the road and one of the best team in the league. They're going toe to toe with LAFC for the top spot in the West with a 12-7-3 record. All time meeting 15-10-14 in favor of RSL. And the last five head to head matchup, it was the Timbers winning 2-1 against RSL before it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. But then RSL won 3-1 against the Timbers. Then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. And then the Timbers winning 2-0 against RSL. So yeah, this is another matchup that could be very, very, very entertaining to watch. And it's unfortunate that this matchup will really be overshadowed in terms of the next matchup that I'll talk about. But again, I expect this should be a very interesting battle because again, the Timbers they have definitely played very well. They play so well to a point where they're now all the way up to fifth place in the West after in the beginning of the season they were among the bottom feeder in the Western Conference. And I don't really need to talk so much about RSL and how they're a team that it really is feel like right now it's between them and LAFC is the team to beat right now in the Western Conference. Speaking of which, LAFC, of course, they are playing against the Columbus Crew in the rematch of last year's MLS Cup. I don't know why this is not a standalone game. This should have been a standalone game. This should have been a game that happened either on Sunday or even an afternoon game on Saturday, because anytime we have a rematch of an MLS Cup, it just does not make sense to decided to put this game along with the midst of all this busy action of match week number 25. And I don't care if there's midweek games this week. I am aware that there are midweek games on Wednesday, but again, for a caliber game like this, it makes no sense why the league decided to not make this a standalone game and not even make this a national televised game on Fox. Though I will say that it really doesn't matter. And also, did I mention that all these games is going to be free this weekend? Yeah, all these games is going to be free to watch. You don't even need an MLS season pass subscription on Apple TV to watch these games. All these games is basically free to watch. But in terms of the record, 13-4-4 in favor of LAFC. Columbus is 11-6-3. 3-0-1 is LAFC all-time meeting over the Columbus Crew. But that one win that Columbus had against LAFC was last year in MLS Cup. They win 2-1 against LAFC to lift MLS Cup. It's their third title in their franchise history. Before it was LAFC winning 2-0 on the road against Columbus, then winning 3-0 on the road against Columbus, and then winning 2-0 at home against the Columbus Crew. Fun fact though, I actually went to that game between LAFC and the Columbus Crew back in 2018. But yeah, I mean, obviously, this is definitely a mouth-watering matchup, and a matchup that I will not be surprised we're gonna see it again in MLS Cup again. I mean, I know people will want to see a different matchup in MLS Cup, but do not be surprised if both of these teams could be heading into a collision course, and we could be seeing something similar to a couple of years ago. Where remember a couple of years ago, people were getting tired of seeing Seattle taking on Toronto FC, and in an MLS Cup. It feels like we had a trilogy of that because 3 of the 4 MLS Cup was Seattle versus Toronto, and that I'm pretty sure people would not want to see an LAFC versus Columbus game. But again, the quality that this game has between both of these teams, it should be a very mouth-watering matchup. And I know I have beaten to death with this, but I'm gonna repeat again. This game should have been a standalone game. This game should not be among with all these busy action that is happening on Saturday night for match week number 25. With that being said, heading into the final game that we're going to talk about, and unfortunately, this game not only is going to be overshadowed, but no one's going to tune into this game between the San Jose Earthquakes and Sporting KC. Heck, I don't even think Quakes fan or Sporting KC fans would even care about this matchup because these are two teams that I said before they look like they're done this season. And while there are some team in the East that I feel like they're done, at least I think the playoff race in the East is a little bit closer compared to those bottom feeder team and the team that are like literally at the bottom of this stand things, that is these two teams, and they're just so far back where it's not about playing for playoffs anymore. It's playing for pride, or at least if you're Sporting KC, the good news for them is that they still have the U.S. Open Cup, and that this kind of feels a little bit similar to what we saw in 2022, where it feels like they're once again putting all their eggs in the basket off the U.S. Open Cup, knowing that they're probably not going to do anything whatsoever in league play. But in terms of the overall record, 4-2-16 that the Quakes has had, but they did finally get their first win against the Chicago Fire, and they're since May, and they're going to try to do something that they haven't done at all this season, which is getting back-to-back wins. They play again an SKC side that have a 5-5-13 record. All-time meeting 32-13-28 in favor of the Quakes. Last 5 head-to-head matchup, it's a 2-1 win against the Quakes earlier this season. Before it was a 0-0 draw. This was in the wild card round from last season, where Sporting KC was able to win on a PK shootout. Then Sporting KC won 3-0 against the Quakes, before the Quakes winning 3-0 against Sporting KC, and then Sporting KC winning 1-0 against the Quakes. Recently, at least in terms of of five these head-to-head meetings, Sporting KC definitely has gone the better with the Quakes. The Quakes have always tended to have their struggle against Sporting KC, but Sporting KC is not having a good season this year, especially on the road as well. I mean, this season they just look they've been very bad this season on the road. In fact, I don't think they even won a road game this season as well. Though again, if they're gonna finally get their first road win this season might as well in the hand of the San Jose Earthquakes, because again, this is a team that is like the Santa Claus of MLS. They're gifting points left and right, and while Chicago didn't get that memo, we'll see whether or not if that's the case for Sporting KC. Either way, if this is a matchup that I'm pretty sure no one is gonna watch, but I'll still tune into it, because after all, I have to do the review of all of these game tomorrow and also on Monday. But that being said, that is pretty much it for the preview of all these games. Like I said, I'm doing these preview a little bit late. By the time this preview is uploaded, it's probably going to be less than an hour before the first of what would be a busy 14 game action on Saturday night. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure guys you like, smash the subscribe button. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of these games and your prediction for all 14 of these games. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.